83. 기쁨 속에 있어라. 아들아, 내가 너를 뽑은 것은 내가 가장 가난하고 가장 작고 가장 한계점이 많아. 인간적으로 보면 가장 가진 것이 없는 사람이라는 단순한 이유 때문이었다. 내가 너를 택한 또 다른 이유는 내 원수가 과거에 내 삶 속에서 성공적으로 승리를 구가한 적이 있었기 때문이다. 그것은 내가 가장 크게 승리할 때 몸소 행할 모든 것을 너로 하여금 미리 살아보도록 한 하나의 예표 같은 것이었다. 내 원수가 세상과 교회와 영혼들에 대한 완전한 승리를 스스로 노래할 만하다고 여길 날이 올 것이다. 그때 비로소 나는 개입하여 무시무시할 정도로 위압적으로 영원히 이겼다는 확신이 크면 클수록 그만큼 더 결정적인 것이 될 참패를 그에게 안겨줄 작정이다. 앞으로 일어날 일은 너무나 엄청난 것이어서 세상이 창조된 이래 일찍이 그런 일은 없었을 정도다. 그래서 그 모든 일이 이미 성서에 예언되어 있는 것이다. 그것은 나, 태양을 입은 여인과 붉은 용인 사탄 사이의 무서운 싸움에 대한 예언이니 사탄은 마르크스적 무신론이라는 오류로 많은 사람을 유혹하는 데 성공하고 있다. 성서에는 또한 천사들과 내 자녀들이 반역의 천사들이 이끄는 용의 추종자들과 벌이게 될 싸움 및 특히 나의 완전한 승리가 분명하게 예언되어 있다. 아들들아, 너희는 그런 사건을 겪으며 살도록 불려진 것이다. 의식적으로 전투에 대비하기 위해서 지금은 너희가 그것을 알아두어야 할 때다. 나로서는 지금이 내 계획의 일부를 너희에게 내보이기 시작하는 시기이다. 우선은 내 원수가 일체를 정복해서 무엇이나 이미 제 소나기에 넣은 기분이 들도록 할 필요가 있다. 그래서 그는 교회 내부에 들어올 허락을 받아 하느님의 성전을 암흑에 잠기게 하는데 성공할 것이며 성전의 성직자들 가운데서 가장 많은 희생자를 낼 것이다. 그때는 과연 내 사제들, 지극히 사랑하는 그 아들들이 엄청나게 타락하는 시기가 되리라. 사탄이 어떤 사제들에게는 교만의 덫을 놓고 다른 이들에게는 유욕의 덫을, 또 다른 이들에게는 의심 내지 불신의 덫을, 또 다른 이들에게는 실망과 고독의 덫을 놓을 것이다. 그리하여 너무도 많은 이들이 내 아들 예수님과 나를 의심하면서 내 교회가 이젠 끝장이 났다고 여길 것이다. 그 큰 전투를 위해 내가 모으고 있는 소중한 아들들, 티 없는 내 성심에 봉헌한 사제들아, 너희가 사용해야 할 1차적 무기는 나에 대한 신뢰이다. 너희의 가장 완전한 맡김이다. 공포, 실망, 우울의 유혹을 극복해라. 실망은 너희 활동을 마비시키므로 내 원수를 돕는 격이 된다. 침착해라. 기쁨 속에 있어라. 내 교회가 지금 끝나는 것이 아니다. 바야흐로 다가올 전반적이고 놀라운 쇄신이 시작되고 있을 뿐이다. 내 아들 예수님의 대리자는 내게서 받은 선물을 통해 벌써 그것을 예감하고 있다. 그래서 현재의 우울한 상황 속에서도 너희에게 기쁨 속에 있으라고 권유하는 것이다. 기쁨 속에 있으라고요? 너희는 아주 어리둥절해하면서 내게 묻는다. 그렇다, 아들들아, 너희 모두를 감싸고 있는 내 티 없는 성심의 기쁨 속에 있어라. 가장 드센 폭풍이 밖에서 휘몰아치고 있을 때도 너희에게는 이 엄마의 성심이 평화의 처소가 될 것이다. 상처를 받았거나 자주죄에 떨어졌거나 혹은 의심했거나 어느 때는 배반을 했다 하더라도 어쨌거나 실망은 하지 말아라. 내가 너희를 사랑하기 때문이다. 내 원수가 끈덕지게 너희를 괴롭힐수록 너희에 대한 내 사랑이 더욱더 커지기 마련이다. 아들들아, 나는 엄마다. 이전에 빼앗긴 적이 있기 때문에 그만큼 더 너희를 사랑하는 엄마다. 그리고 나의 기쁨은 티 없는 내 성심이 극진히 아끼는 아들이여 사제인 너희 모두를 각각으로 정화시키고 굳세게 하여 앞으로는 그 누구도 내 아들 예수님의 사랑에서 너희를 떼어놓을 수 없게 하는 것이다. 내가 너희를 내 아들 예수님의 살아있는 모상으로 만들어주리라. 그러니 행복하여라. 신뢰하여라. 온전히 내게 맡기고 언제나 나와 함께 기도하여라. 아들들아, 싸우기 위해서 또 그 싸움에 승리하기 위해서 내가 사용할 무기는 너희의 기도와 고통이다. 그러니까 너희도 역시 그렇다, 십자가에 달리게 될 것이다. 내 아들 예수님과 나와 함께 그분의 엄마여 너희 엄마인 내 곁에 있는 십자가의 말이다.
So I decided to share this reading today because when you read the beginning messages of the movement, which I invite everyone to really read the whole book, there's just a whole lot to ponder and reflect on in the messages Mary gives us. And I know when I joined the movement in '79 and I began reading these messages, I could already see the beginning of loss of faith among people. She said how many of her sons will be seduced, and let's face it, you and I can see this in the world in the past and in today. Pride, the spirit of pride, the love of the flesh. Think of all the clergy scandal. How many priests unfortunately got into that sin of homosexual activity with young people, a grave sin. And that's a terrible thing to happen. By doubts, others by unbelief. They no longer believe in the gospel. They don't believe the resurrection. They don't believe in demons. They don't believe in even heaven or hell in some cases. And still others by discouragement and loneliness. This is a biggie. When you get discouraged and lonely, that's a big cross. That's a heavy cross. And what Mary tells us is we're going to find joy and peace in her Immaculate Heart. What I suggest when people get to those moments of discouragement is to turn to the Lord Jesus, turn to His mother, and place their hope in Jesus. Give everything to Mary. And they're going to find tremendous joy, as she says. Now, the joy comes from the fact that you've allowed yourself to be transformed by the grace of God, and this is what Mary's doing. She's working on all the priests of her movement that are devoted to her to form their lives like she did with Gobbi, and fill them with joy. Now notice what she says about Gobbi, which when I read that I thought, well, that's kind of like all of us, I guess. She said, I've chosen you, my son, in the first paragraph, for this simple reason, because you're the poorest, the smallest, and the most limited. Which nation would choose the guy that's the bottom of the pole for their president? It's like, she chooses Gobbi because he's the smallest, the poorest, most limited, and humanly speaking, the most destitute. I find that rather humorous that she chooses people that you say, wow, how could Mary take a priest like Gobbi and make him a great leader for the movement? She did. And also notice that next paragraph. I have chosen you because in your past life my adversary had almost succeeded in claiming a victory. Now we don't know what Gobbi struggled with, but let's face it, any kind of sin will do it. Any kind of grave sin will do it. Gobbi must have really struggled with something, and it's only when he realized Mary in his life that he began to realize victory over that. Now I have a strong feeling that many Catholics are struggling with a lot of stuff, and I think what happens to many Catholics is when they turn to the Blessed Mother especially. I'm not denying Jesus. Jesus is the one that makes victory possible, don't get me wrong. But when you turn to the Blessed Mother and you give it to Mary and say, Mary, I'm in a real bad place, intercede for your son for me, or whatever, give Mary the problem. Mary intervenes. And I've seen so many people's lives change because of devotion to Mary. And Jesus is, get this clear, Catholics and Protestants, Jesus is working through Mary to bring about this victory. Marian devotion is really important because Jesus chooses to work in that way. We've called her the mediatrix of all graces. That's by God's design. We didn't create that dogma. God revealed it. Jesus reveals the role of Mary and bringing about these tremendous victories over Satan. And she also says that, in order for her plan to work, Satan has to be convinced he's got the world in his hands. Well, folks, here it is 2025. He's got the world in his hands. He really does. Even among Catholic Church leadership, bishops confused about sexuality. They're saying, well, no, the church teaching is wrong on sexuality. That's basic heresy. if you look at it strictly speaking from a canon law point of view. The central teachings of Jesus and the Gospel and the Old Testament, New Testament are unchanging. No one can change those teachings, no matter what culture you live in, no matter what's going on in the world, no matter how much confusion reigns in a society like today. Those changes, those teachings do not change. So we see tremendous confusion. Satan seems to have nations in his hand. And think how strong communism has become in the world. That's one of Satan's greatest favorite realities is communism. Because there he can control people. Think about Russia and China and our own struggle with communism in our nation in recent times. We okay? In recent times we've seen the way that many Americans have embraced communism, probably brought about through the education system in our nation. A lot of the liberal educational universities are teaching communism. A lot of schools are teaching communism. That basically there is no God, forget about religion, and you're going to do what we tell you, or otherwise we're going to fire you. We're going to invade your home if you're a Catholic promoting pro-life. We're going to invade you with a SWAT team. That has happened. That has happened. SWAT teams invading Catholic homes because a Catholic protests at a pro-life place, at abortion clinic, trying to promote the unborn babies. Footnote: when people die, they realize that conceived babies or children, major hell is going to break loose in judgment. I mean, we need to face this really honestly. When does life begin? Conception. If you're a Catholic, you doubt that, the Feast of Mary's Immaculate Conception. A holy day of obligation. So if you say, I don't believe life begins at conception, it's just a piece of flesh. That's what Satan says. That's what he says. We say, no, it's a baby. Look at the Blessed Mother. Moment of her conception, the Immaculate One, the one to become the Mother of God. See how the doctrine is obviously clear. Who's making it muddy and messed up? People that have given their souls to Satan. People that have watered down the gospel of Christ and are embracing evil. So, let's face it, this is pretty tough doctrine, but it's time we face up to what's going on. So I want to encourage everybody to think about this. She, from the very beginning of this movement, she's letting us know what's going to happen. Now, in 1975, it didn't look like Satan was in charge. But here it is, 2025. Now, my calculation is 50 years later, right? All hell has broken loose. Nations in Europe trying to mutilate children through surgery. We have tried it in our nation, mutilating children by trying to change their sex. What absurdity. What insanity. How did people come along that thought? It's so dark in our world right now that people can't even see clearly. The only one who has the light, of course, is Jesus, Mary, and all the Catholic Church, all the believers of the Catholic Church that follow the catechism of the Catholic Church. We have the light. All those who are faithful to church teaching, they have the light. We're called to bring it to people that need. And so today, Mary says, be joyous. So ever since I've joined the movement, I know what Gobbi, Blessed Mother worked on Gobbi and changed Gobbi. Now, when I met him back in 1888, when I finally met Father Gobbi, I think I met him in Houston. He was, an insignificant-looking priest. I remember standing in the sanctuary of one church there in Houston, and we were waiting for Gobbi to come. He's going to give a rosary and all this, and a bunch of priests were in the sacristy. And all of a sudden, this guy walks in, and he starts fuddling through the vestments. I said, who is that, the sacristan? It was Gobbi. So right away I got a sense of this, this rather humble individual. But, put it this way, Gobbi loved the Blessed Mother tremendously. And when he came to Corpus Christi back in 1994, he gave a real good sermon at the synagogue. We had a synagogue and then we had Mass together with him. And the cathedral was packed to the hilt, and downstairs was packed to the hilt. I've never seen so many people ever at the cathedral in Corpus Christi. And he was there giving a beautiful sermon, praying the Rosary with us, a man of tremendous faith. And so look what God has done in Gobbi's life. And though he died, I think in 2011, I believe was when God called him home. But they did a beautiful funeral for Father Gobbi. All the priests were there for the retreat when he died. So they had a wonderful funeral mass for Father Gobbi. All the MMP priests, a lot of them were there for that funeral. So anyway, notice that Mary says back in those days, at 75, that the era of Marxist atheism, I mentioned that already. And we thought, well, the fall of communism in Eastern Europe, and it did fall. In Eastern Europe, it did fall, but it came back with a vengeance. It came back to our country. It came to South America. It's many places in Europe now. You know, y'all can be arrested. I was listening to a program that if you pray outside of an abortion clinic in some European countries, you can be arrested simply by being near the clinic. And if you try to say something against abortion, you can be imprisoned. This is happening in, quote, free nations. That's communism. It's communism sneaking in through the back door. It does it very sneakily. Notice it goes to the education places in the nation. Get them first. Get all these professors to be all communist. Then we'll start to think to the kids. And then they get all the teachers to be communists. Get all the federal officials to be communist. Because the people are not going to embrace communism. Communism no one wants. It's terrorism. It's totalitarianism. If you go ask the people of China, the peon on the street, do you like the way you're being treated here? They're gonna, if honest, they're gonna say no. You go talk to those guys that are in charge, the head honchos. Oh, this is a great country. We're doing great. You know, yeah, it's all a lie. So y'all understand what I'm saying? That's how it works. Satan is so ingenious. He gets the people in education first. You get them to be communist, and everybody becomes communist. And then the sources of education, the sources of power, the federal government, and in some states the governor, and district attorneys, get them to be communist. And this is what happens. So the message I want to leave with y'all today is we're in the struggle now, and you know, we've seen that it seems like the church is in a real weak spot right now, almost dead. Oh, by the way, I do want to make a footnote. I know right now Pope Frenstat is very sick. We're offering this rosary also for him. You know, we want everyone, especially our Pope, to be blessed by God. Be blessed by God to carry the mission out to carry out the mission God has given him. That's what we want. So we keep him in prayer. But as we ponder this message about being joyous, I'm hoping that the ultimate message we want to take with us from this reading is that Mary's working in us. Those of you listening to this video right now and you're praying the rosary, Mary's grace is working in your soul. Jesus is working to change you. And I suspect he gives you a lot of joy. When you're consecrated to Mary and you're doing what God wants, you're overcoming sin, you surrender yourself to God, you learn from Mary the fiat. What happens is peace and joy. It's hard to explain. You have to really experience it yourself. But it does happen. You know, it happens. And it comes along with this tremendous change of grace that Mary, with the grace comes from Jesus, but Mary works in a special way to make it powerful in our lives. So, as Satan seems to control the world today, we know that he has a tremendous defeat coming. A tremendous defeat. We don't know when it is. We don't make we're not making any prophecies here. But we know that already what Mary said back in 75, we're in the heart of the battle right now. As I mentioned to all of y'all, see how even our nation has been affected by this in the past few years? I can't believe that from 2010, when most people agreed about sexuality, to 2025, we don't know who we are, whether you're a girl or boy. The insanity is amazing. I hope that distresses you. It distresses me deeply. The people are so confused. Now, where does that confusion come from? Satan. Anytime you have such negative darkness, confusion, and misery, Satan. You know, people just say, well, it's a psychological illness. Yeah, it is, but it's more than that. Being promoted by our adversary. He wants to mock God and make fun of God. Look, God, I made this man think he's a woman. Ha, 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 God. That's what he does. And see, if we're not smart enough to figure that out, we say, that man needs help, absolutely. He's being tempted. He needs help. He needs good guidance, he needs maybe the 12-step program for sanity. I mean, because why? That can happen to anybody. Anybody can have disordered desires and thoughts. But if you're close to Jesus and married, that doesn't happen to you. If you stay close to Jesus and married, you surrender your life to Jesus, the Blessed Mother, you're not going to be confused about who you are. You're going to know exactly your biological sex is who you are, bingo. You don't need someone else to kind of figure that out for you. So, anyway, that's my message today. Mary's motherly, Immaculate Heart is our refuge. We stay close to her, and she's pulling us closer to Jesus. So, I want to just conclude with this thought today, that, you know, Mary says in that paragraph X, I will make of you living copies of Jesus. So consider yourself a copy of Jesus. How successful, how much have you become a copy of Jesus? Are you a clearly visible copy? Are there smudges that need to be taken out? Mary is, with God's grace, making us copies of Jesus. Keep that in mind. That's a beautiful thought. So it can motivate our way of thinking and acting and living.